Welcome back to another episode of Spiritual Teachers Podcast. With me today is my friend Sher Kirti. Sher is a philosopher, an oracle, and has written the book Because You Are: Reflections on Being and Becoming, a collection of personal essays and poems. It's such an honor to have you on today, Sher. Welcome on.
Thank you, Peter. I'm so excited to be here and thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, we got a really interesting podcast for everyone today. We're going to talk about astrology and Cher's journey with that. We're going to talk about working with and being part of a cult. We'll talk about individuation and working through shadow aspects to reach wholeness, as well as the I Ching as a divination tool. So I'm really excited. And how the podcast traditionally goes, I'd love to invite you to share how your awakening journey started.
Thank you, Peter, for the introduction. And every time that question comes up, I feel like, okay, where do I start? Because there's so many pivotal points, and each one feels like its own awakening. But if
Hmm.
I start from the very beginning, um, I guess I would start with I was raised Buddhist, so that was always in my awareness. But I think, like anyone who is raised Christian or Catholic, being raised Buddhist by a religious mother also has its own, trauma that can interweave with that of feeling conditioned by shame or guilt. Karma would bring in it. It's not just heaven and hell. It would be like you're building bad karma if you don't do this or that. So
Mm-hmm.
that was a bit of an influence as well. But I was taught mantras and sitting in lotus position and meditating at a young age and prayer. And I was
That's really awesome.
introduced to Buddha and Kuan Yin at that age. So I feel like that was always with me.
Hmm.
But because of the way it was around, I think I also built a natural skepticism
Hmm.
towards it. And growing up in a very Christian area where people were always knocking on our doors and sharing the words of the Bible, I definitely grew up with resistance.
Hmm.
But when it came to me itself, I was around 15, 16, and I started learning about world religions in high school. And I think it was the first time I was told about my own religion in a way that I could understand growing up as, in America. So through words that I could connect with and open my mind. And through that, in the Eightfold Path, the Four Noble Truths of Buddhism, those are things that my mom didn't quite articulate. So learning about it and about right action, that brings in not eating meat or being, ethical towards animals. And so I
Hmm.
started looking into that.
Hmm.
And so at 15, I went vegan. And I think that opened, like, just cracked that whole world open. I got into yoga. I was getting into animal activism, all those things like a passionate teenager would do when you find a niche that you're excited about and you feel, moved by.
Yeah.
So I feel like that was the first layer of my awakening, was feeling emotionally moved by like the suffering of animals and
Hmm.
wanting to do something about it.
Yeah.
And then that got me into the world of yoga, which gets you into the world of chakras and into Hindu texts. So I started reading other religions, Bhagavad Gita, learning about that story and just seeing the correlations. And I think just there was an excitement of, wow, like there's like a whole world out there I wasn't told about or people don't really talk about, especially where I was from in the Midwest.
Yeah.
And it feels, yeah, it was really exciting. And then that led me to, I think, just experimenting more. And then you get to that age, 18, 20, I, of course, started taking psychedelics. And I remember LSD was, I think, a huge component of just shifting, just being able to create those neural pathways and see things that I never thought about before, or not really think about this whole journey in an intellectual way, but that I was actually sensing and perceiving a little bit differently. So I remember another point of the journey was taking a little bit too much LSD one night and having an ego death. At least the first one that I feel that was an ego death for me.
Hmm.
where I started to lose like completely my sense of self.
Yeah.
And I came home from this just tumultuous night out, and I told my roommate about it. I was like trying to explain to her what was happening to me. I was like, I didn't know where it was, why I was doing what I was doing, and started making all these connections. And my roommate just comes into my room and drops Be Here Now by Ram Dass, that,
Oh, wow.
square blue book.
Yeah.
Like drops it in front of me, and I opened it up, and I just remember something about the first page just clicked, and I felt this is what I was experiencing. Like this put into words what I was feeling
Hmm.
for the first time.
Yeah.
And so I just stayed up all night reading through that book. And I think that was the next layer of my journey, was getting deep into Ram Dass's teachings.
Hmm.
And his teachings were so human, and he didn't come in, he's not intense. And I think I had that resistance to dogma and structure, or things have to be a certain way, or this is what you need to do. And I feel like he was such a benevolent voice in the spiritual space
Yeah.
that just felt so welcoming and heart centered.
Hmm.
And I think the way he taught really opened me up to, I mean, everything. And I think from there it just accelerated, where I wanted to get to know more. And I started to synchronistically also begin to read tarot. Like it was just given to me, it was gifted, a deck.
Hmm.
And that was another leg of the journey, beginning to read for myself, get reflection, think about the world in ways I haven't thought about before. And I feel like that's where it exploded, where I was, I think being in the Midwest still, I didn't have many people around me to talk about these things with.
Yeah.
And I think when these things first happen to you, you start to disconnect with the community that you had built at that time,
Yeah.
where maybe you're kind of, I think at the time I was becoming a little bit of that weirdo. I was like becoming the hippie weirdo in the group, and they were like, okay, it's like vegan, and it's just like wanting to do all like yoga and all these things, and reading tarot cards in my room. And it was so fun and exciting at that time, all of those things. And so I was craving community, and that's what led me to California.
Okay.
Because I was like, oh, there's people my age in California doing all of these things.
Yeah.
And so that was my intention. And I left for California, and that is what happened. I met, so many good friends, and we're getting together. We're doing all those fun things like sitting in circles, calling in the guides, playing singing bowls. So it was just, that was the really fun period,
Yeah.
the,
Yeah.
the beginning when you're discovering, and it feels so fun. Like you've entered a mystical world and you found your people.
Yeah, like
And
Harry Potter school has begun.
yeah, exactly. Yes, that's it. It just feels like, wow, like there's a whole world adjacent to what I grew up being taught or told about. And it's so fun. And it also brings in, um, I think, a positive light and a positive perspective to the world, where it's easy to be pessimistic, where it's like, oh, I'm learning about, I don't know, like protection from guides, like feeling that comfort of calling in guides, being in circle with friends, drinking cacao, being able to be vulnerable, share these things. And I think the enticing aspect of that is just community and a level of vulnerability that most of us don't get to experience
Yeah.
in the world. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you were super blessed to have like Buddhism, even though, like you said, there was some traumatic aspects of it, but like I would have loved to have known about that as a kid, and like, did you ever have like a dark night of the soul through the journey?
Oh yeah. I mean, I feel like I just got to the point where I'm like, okay, this is like where it's really fun. and then
Uh-huh.
and then the next few years after that was when it started getting crazy.
Okay.
I would say that up to then was like when it was just opening up my world.
Right.
So I'll quickly zoom through the next few years, which led me to now. Um, but with Buddhism, no, I loved it. I think looking back, I realized what it implemented into my consciousness that was traumatic. But at the time, I never felt suppressed by Buddhism. I really honored Buddha, and I respected all the things that my mom taught me. And she always told me Buddha was more of a scientist and that he could see all the microscopic living things in the world. And
I
that's
like
why
that.
he was aware and honored those things and knew that every step he took, he was, he reluctantly had to kill some being, like microscopic insect underneath his feet. And I think putting it that way, it allowed me to honor aspects of Buddhism, to honor the teachings and the deities while also having the mind of a scientist at the same time.
I
Yeah.
love that. I love that. And before we get into the next part of the journey, I'm really curious like how Kuan Yin played into played into that. So is she part of Buddhism as well?
Yeah. She is, well, she is closely related. There's different types of Buddhism. I grew up with Mahayana Buddhism,
Hmm.
and in Buddhism, especially from Vietnamese cultures, which is where my family is from, is Vietnam, they are closely interrelated with Chinese mysticism and mythology. And so Kuan Yin does kind of play into that, but she is technically a Buddha herself.
Okay.
She is just another Buddha, not the
Okay.
main like Siddhartha Gautama Buddha.
Okay.
He's typically central because his story was like the most impactful and he supposedly started it. But then there's all these other Buddhas that came after him, and Kuan Yin's one of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But they never like interacted. They were never lovers or anything along those lines.
No,
Okay.
no. And like in some iterations, Kuan Yin is actually a man and not a
Okay.
woman,
Okay.
but like a very effeminate man.
Okay.
So he was like mistaked as a woman. But then there's also stories where Kuan Yin was a princess in her life, just like how Siddhartha was a prince. Yeah.
Okay. And I'm sure there's whole sects that just, worship Kuan Yin, right?
Actually, I don't know about that. Not that I know of, not that I've heard. The thing is with like a lot of Eastern religions, um, is like Hinduism, for example. There's so many
Hmm.
different gods and goddesses, and similarly, I grew up with many different deities in the house, like
Okay.
the god of war, and then there's Kuan Yin, the goddess of compassion. So it was like the multi deity type of religion.
Okay. Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, it's really that I feel like a lot of them are, from my understanding, reincarnating as different deities as they keep going along their journey. Like, Krishna, for example, a lot of people believe became Christ.
Oh, I think I have heard that once. Yeah.
Yeah. And their energy to me when I tune in feels very similar, you know,
Yeah.
because they're both
I can
very
see that.
loving.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very loving and caring. Um, I met this person at the cafe yesterday, and she blew my mind a little bit with like how 14 years ago she had sat with ayahuasca. So before anybody even knew about it, the majority of our generation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she talked about how her belief system now has shifted completely towards Christianity and Christ, and that a lot of these different deities and things like that to her are on the demonic side. And she didn't believe in reincarnation and those kind of things, which um, I shared with her. For me, reincarnation was one of those key moments when I was like, whoa, this is like a puzzle piece that puts all the other pieces together. And then I started like remembering past lifetimes with people and connecting with um, like finding videos of these little kids that had been, shot down in World War II, reincarnated, and then were able to meet the people that they had been in war with that were still alive.
Mm-hmm.
And they like confirm that that's how they died. And like to me, that those things can't be denied. But she gave me a perspective where she was like, well, there's these spirits that'll like speak into your ear and tell you things that you may never have known before. And I was like, oh, that's an interesting perspective, you know?
Hmm.
So it was just so, it kind of like, um, I believe that my belief system like isn't boxed in. It's very open and expansive, but it felt like it like opened up another layer of it where I was like, whoa, like this is, even though it feels like more constrained, it all at the same time, it like the paradox, right? It like opens something up at the same time. So I thought that was really interesting. So
That's the topic that I feel like you opened something up that I could talk about on my journey,
yeah,
and just something that I've been curious about as well. So two parts. One is calling in guides. I think there's a lot of warnings about that, right? Because you
yeah,
could be calling in entities, or you maybe the frequency you're in, like you're in a desperate place or
hmm
you're in a dark place, then what you're calling in could be attracted to that.
hmm
And so I remember I used to feel afraid, and I would call on Archangel Michael all the time to sleep, because I, for a period of time, would have sleep paralysis, and I would have really intense experiences when I was in sleep paralysis.
wow,
And I would call in Archangel Michael. And one time during one of my sleep paralysis experiences, and sometimes they're like dreams, or you're like facing off with entities.
uh-huh,
And one time I called Archangel Michael in, and he didn't appear as himself. He felt dark. He felt like dangerous to me.
mm,
And I remember waking up from that, and that was kind of an epiphany for me in that moment of, oh, like I don't know what I'm working with. Like I
mhm.
could also be in such a a fearful place that I'm calling in something that's feeding off of that. And it opened up this whole box for me as well. Like, well, what else could people be communicating with? you know,
Yeah,
what if people are, especially when they're very intense. And this was my first theory at the time. I feel like I've shifted a little bit with that, but I'm still curious about the pipeline from New Age spirituality to Jesus, because
yeah,
that is a huge thing.
yeah.
And I remember when I first heard of it was uh, what was her name? She's a really popular Oracle creator.
Oh, I know who
I'm
you're talking about.
blanking
She,
on her name. Like
yeah.
starts with D.
Um, it might have been Diane or I know who you're
Yeah.
talking about, but she like created all these angel numbers and a website,
Yes.
and then
Yep.
like she was just like I'm letting all this go. Christ is the
Hmm.
way, and then she just stopped doing all that.
Yeah, because I
That
was
was like
working
my
at
main, yeah, that's like my main website I go to this day
really.
for like angel numbers, you know?
Yeah, I know. Like, why I can't think of her name. But I was working at Mystic Journey bookstore in Venice at the time,
Hmm.
and we sold a bunch of her decks. And at
Yeah.
that time, she had just renounced it all and stopped publishing it. And people would, of course, come in and talk about it, like, "Oh, did you hear about her?" Or like, "Oh, we can't get any more of these decks. This is the last of them." And I remember just thinking about that, like, okay, well, what if Jesus is this like open-hearted, really compassionate, Christ consciousness type of person, if you're connected to someone like that, why would they tell you to be, shutting everything out? At
Right.
the time, that's what I thought, because
Right.
I also I know another argument to that of like,
Right.
of course, it can be distractions, like Christ just wants you to be pure and focused on one thing. And I totally get that too. But at the same time, I felt that the way people would approach it was that they immediately switched the flip and would shun everything new age, would shame the journey, would look down upon it. And I think that this is such a big thing. There's so much I can go into with this, but I feel like that's typically what I observe, is that it comes from this place of righteousness,
Right.
and there's another uh, version of spiritual ego coming in
Yeah.
saying these things. And so, yeah, I was always curious to what that was. And at the time, I had a theory that maybe there was like like how Archangel Michael has like a dark version. There was like a nega Jesus that was telling people these things,
Mm,
you know?
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
there's so much that came through as you were sharing that. And I remember when I was having my awakening in the beginning, uh, I was living by myself in the Poconos in Pennsylvania, and I didn't have anyone in my life that was spiritual. I was just like going on Instagram trying to connect with, people that were, knowledgeable, and I connected with the twin flame community, and I like figured out that was a whole thing, and I remember I would hear these beings land or appear on my roof every night. And I was like, what are you guys? Like, it didn't feel like they were angelic because my, I think I've shared it once or twice on the podcast, but I had an experience where my guardian angel actually physically appeared in this reality at one moment when I was really trying to like connect with my guides and my angels. I was like, please just show me so I know that you're real, you know? But this was different. It didn't feel like that energy. It didn't feel like that true unconditional love. They felt like bodyguards, you know?
Mm.
And one night I'm laying in bed and I hear them come. They're like footsteps on the roof. And I connect with them telepathically and I'm like, what are you guys? Like, what are we doing here? What's our relationship? And they're like, we're not your friends. We're your protectors, and we're here to protect you from the other beings and the other spirits around, because right now you're just starting to remember and learn. So we're here until you don't need us anymore. This is our contract with you. And
Mm.
and so in that time, that was like I had just gone through that uh, Dark Night of the Soul, where I was like praying and like crying and just like so desperate for an answer, and I was just asking, please show me the truth, please show me why I'm feeling these things, right? And then that's when my Kundalini shot up without anything. I was driving, and then I found Kundalini yoga the next day, and then I found out what a twin flame was that same day. So it all just like bomb went off, right? Like my reality was like, whoa, and then all just shifted, right? So I say that because these beings were like gargoyles, almost like that kind of
Mm.
energy, where they were like, we're your protectors and we'll come when you really need us. And they came several years later again when I was really scared. This spirit was following me and very malevolent, right? Like very aggressive. And they came and this people saw it. Like these teenagers that were really tapped in, three or four of them saw they either saw it or they felt it. They saw this portal open up and these beings come in and sit behind me, and they were like they described them to me, and I was like, oh, those are my those are my crew. That's my protectors, you know. And I'm like, don't worry about
Yeah.
them. They're good, you know. But like and then people saw that spirit that was following me standing on the outside of this sweat lodge when I was like in this state of panic and fear, and like
Mm-hmm.
7 days of no sleep, like really low frequency that I was in at that moment. And so that was one of those aha moments when I was like, okay, we have protectors no matter how low the frequency is, no matter how afraid and fearful we are, there's these beings that will come and protect us, even though they may not seem and feel like that angelic energy that is in those higher frequencies. This is like, to me, felt like the equivalent of that, but we had some sort of contract where, I had, who knows what the contract was, but they were there helping me, right? And so I thought that was really interesting. And then the piece about Jesus Christ is like there's so many bridges of spirituality in Jesus, of like Yogananda Paramahansa, where he had his gurus and Krishna and Jesus on his altar, in the Self-Realization Fellowship. And then his last book was the Second Coming of the Christ. That was two tomes that are like, 600 pages each. And that was like his final teachings and his final words that were published after he passed. And so, there's all these bridges with Christianity and with Jesus. And then The Way of Mastery. Do you know that book?
I'm not sure. I don't remember
The
the
Way
way
of
of master.
Mastery is uh, a book about the channelings of Jesus's true teachings. This woman channeled
Mm-hmm.
his true teachings, and she
Mm-hmm.
made this book where you can like feel his energy. I could feel his energy like permeating through the book, and like his true teachings coming through. And so, yeah, it just like with Christianity, there's the aspect of like church was the government, right? Like for very
Mm-hmm.
many hundreds of years, right? And to this day, church has a huge impact on what's happening in the world, and the Pope and all these people are big influences on today's society. So, uh, it's a really interesting journey to observe for different people for me. And Jesus is definitely one of my gurus and one of my teachers, uh, and I have a lot of others, and I take what resonates from each teaching and
Mm-hmm.
leave the rest. So I just wanted to add
Yeah.
that piece because it was like itching to come out, because it felt so
Yeah.
important.
No, I like that you brought that up. Your crew of gargoyles and these heavy, because what that brings up for me is, that's a really good point because that in the spiritual journey, it's really easy to look at those entities as something bad to shun or to shy away from. And I do think it's important and to acknowledge that there are low frequencies or things that look demonic that are helping you because at the end of the day, I do believe that anything demonic is just a projection of our own shadow that we
Right.
have to face off with, or that they're there as a catalyst
Hmm.
for us.
Right.
So even as protectors, which is something I've never thought about, but that is, yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up because it's a beautiful point.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I'm still curious. So when you felt that energy, did it feel like Archangel Michael when that being came, or did it feel like a completely different entity?
I I think what that moment taught me was to more so instill strength within myself and not seek it outside of myself.
Ah,
I
okay.
think the experience, because even though I was, starting to connect with guides and things, I think why I emphasize individuation in Jungian's work is because I do believe that whatever I was experiencing at that time was reflecting where I was at. Like
Hmm.
I was fearful, I was in a heavy place, I was maybe ridden with guilt and shame. And it reminded me that to I think in that moment, the teaching for me was to not just hope that someone else or something else is going to protect me.
Hmm.
So it shifted my affirmation at the time to start saying, I am safe, I am protected,
Yeah.
versus versus like, please protect me, like please keep me
Right.
safe. You know?
Right.
So every night for a while, I would go to bed and I'd say, I am safe, I am protected, I'm loved, I'm supported. And
Hmm.
that was all I would say because I felt like it was bringing the reliance back to myself and just affirming, like, okay, I'm okay. I don't, it's not that I'm not okay and I need someone to be there to protect me. So
Yeah,
that
that's
was
a
a powerful shift. Yeah.
yeah, it's subtle, right? It's a subtle shift. It's not super huge, but it makes a big impact for sure. And I think one thing I want to add is like when people are calling in these beings, it's very important to demand that they are of light and love and 100% benevolent, right? Whenever I call in the guides, which I do often, I always emphasize that at the end. Like
Mhm.
everyone that's coming in has to be benevolent and 100% of love and light. Otherwise, you're not welcome into the space.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I like that you did that too, the 100% benevolent at the very beginning
Yeah.
of our conversation. But yeah, when I got into Reiki, that was something that I practiced a little bit more because we had to call in guides to support us with healing or clearing the space. But just to jump forward into like the dark night of the soul, where I was also like on my knees crying and praying, I think what actually sparked that, I mean, there's so many things, but just to get into it, I think I kept going so much deeper into the purification ritual of spirituality. I was going raw vegan. I was eating alkaline, wearing all white, getting rid of like black clothes from my closet. Like it was just so extreme.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was just going head first into it. And at the time I had attracted a partner where he was the same way. And
Mm-hmm.
so it was kind of feeding into that need to be perfect and pure all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually that led me to doing ayahuasca.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was just invited. And one of those things too that I never really looked for psychedelic experiences, but if it came to me or someone offered it, I was like, okay, I'll
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah.
And so I had a friend invite me and I went to do it. And at that time I was so deep in Kundalini as well, breath work, praying with my beads every day, just so serious
Mm-hmm.
about everything. And that ceremony, that was a whole nother awakening in itself. It was just a complete crumbling and dismantling of my spiritual ego. Like I felt like Mother Ayahuasca just came in and slapped me across the face and was like, get a hold of yourself, because I think even though I seemed serious and I seemed wise and mature on the outside, I think on the inside I was not facing off with a lot. I think it was very much so that phase of spiritual bypassing.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, not acknowledging like the darker parts that we just said, to recognize that those are needed or those need to be felt, to be held. And I think it just came up all at once, and it was all the whole night just crying and crying, and it was a very intense experience for me. And I came out of that just feeling really weak. Like I think my sense of spiritual ego and confidence was just completely crumbled, and it humbled me,
Mm-hmm.
thankfully, instead of doing the opposite. So I came out of it really, that was beginning of questioning everything, starting to feel almost like disgusted or resistant and having an aversion to everything that I was doing, where
Mm.
I had to get away from it for a while.
Yeah.
And like I almost couldn't be around the community I had cultivated anymore. And I felt like I needed to get back to my human self.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty much what I did for a year. But of course, I swung to the other side where I was really pushing it away. I neglected my meditation practice, I neglected all of it. And because it was just hard to be around, it felt like it was tied up in so much that I didn't understand, and so much that was feeding into a part of me I couldn't look at the time.
And that was around the time when you were exiting the cult too, right?
No, no, that was another time where it happened again.
Oh, okay. So,
Like,
interesting.
so basically, I came out of that, came back in, and I ended up there in the cult because I got a job, and I just had a trusted friend get me a job with them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I was just desperate to be somewhere new, and it was a good job opportunity. And so I was just being really open-minded about it.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely went in a little bit skeptical, but I always gave people the benefit of the doubt. And I think that is why I go so deep with teachers and practices, is because I'm just trusting it all the way in.
Yeah.
But yeah, I went in and I got the job, and I think because of that, I had to accept the environment I was in. I had to be open to it. Like, of
Mm-hmm.
course, I have to learn to love this community and these people. Like, I have to at least try to give them benefit of the doubt. Like, all of these wonderful, beautiful people around me, clearly trust them.
Wearing all
But
white.
I know, but like they seemed so grounded. They were all older people who had been made a financial like foundation for themselves. Like it wasn't young hippies anymore, you know?
Right, right.
So I think coming in young, I was trusting in these adults, thinking like, well, there must be something here, you
Hmm.
know? But there definitely were moments, the people I worked with, where there were things they said I definitely could not tr- fully believe, that were a little too crazy for me.
Well, it was, yeah,
But I
well,
had
okay, that's really interesting. So, can you give a couple examples?
yeah, they would make exaggerated claims about their teachers of, you know, how they were completely ascended masters, they had completely genetically liberated themselves, that, you know, they're not even influenced by their astrology anymore, you know, things like that, or that they can manifest physical things. Like there was a time where they would brought a stone out of his mouth and like in front of everyone.
Uh-huh.
Things like how I don't want to go into like so much detail about the people
Yeah.
themselves, but one of the person like one of the people that I worked with, he was one of the most devoted
Hmm.
followers, and he would just I could just see like he was so sparkly eyed every time he talk about them, of like, oh, she can do this, or like they, you know, the other day I was in the temple and she said that there's like 258 guides in the room and things like that. I think
Mm.
I was always open and I'd let people express themselves. I wouldn't question them or reject what they were saying.
Hmm.
But I think underneath I was always skeptical and a little doubtful,
Even
because
from
it
day
just
one?
seemed, oh yeah, from day one, if anything, I began to gaslight myself the deeper I was in it.
Okay.
Because I think I came in skeptical and then I opened myself up. I got to know the community. I started to trust people more. I started to spend more time with them because I had to work with them all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the emotional connection for me, when someone's kind, when people are nice to me, I think there's a part like my unhealed inner child was like, oh, this feels so good, you know. And
Yeah.
because it feels so good, I trust these people. I'm gonna go with it. Like I'll be a part of it. And I think that they did cultivate spiritual powers. I think as any teacher on the journey would.
Yeah.
But I think that there's always a point on, you know, any spiritual teacher's journey where you cultivate those powers and then you stop there, you know.
Yeah,
There's
because
not
it's like a
this, you know.
distraction.
Yeah.
It's a siddhi, right? It's a siddhi uh,
Yeah.
that is developed, and it's a real thing. Yogananda writes about it in the autobiography of a yogi. There's cases in India where people create coins out of their
Mm-hmm.
palm. They create powder out of their fingertips. Um,
Yeah.
these abilities that are meant to like shake up the matrix and the thought of like what's possible
Yeah.
with gravity and this reality and the more I learn about these things and talk to people that have been really devoted to the spiritual path, the more I realize like these things are real, right? Like people have shared with me these levitation stories that they don't share with other people. People have shared with me all kinds of different things that uh, are part of what naturally happens when you're fully committed and fully all in, which I love that quality about you, right? Like, why not go all in and really like take it to the fullest and see what's there versus like just one toe in. You know what I mean? Like, I'd
Yeah.
rather I'm more like that. I'm either all in or I'm all out, you know?
Yeah, and I was questioning myself more so because I was really sitting with, well, why am I so doubtful? You know, what is it within me? I think I was always trying to take accountability and do self work. That when I started feeling the dissonance, which I think now looking back was my intuition, my gut,
Hmm.
at that time I thought I was shaming myself for having these thoughts. I was thinking, why are you being so negative? Like these people are so kind to you, you
Mm.
know, you
Yeah.
know, why are you having these thoughts? And I thought it was something wrong with me, that I couldn't go all the way
Mm-hmm.
and that I couldn't be completely devoted,
Hmm.
like some of the people I saw. And I don't know what it was that it was. You know what it was? It was the same repeating of I was in a community where there was no authenticity to be able to really talk about the heavier things we were feeling. It
Hmm.
was always like, no, that's like you're being negative.
Ah,
Like that was what was being reinforced. And that if there
interesting.
were, if there was drama, it would just be deflected as, okay, this is just karma we're working through, which is true to a degree,
Hmm.
but it also created a very toxic environment where
Hmm.
everyone was being very psychologically pressured because they couldn't question the teachers. The teachers
Mm.
could say certain things, but they would take it on upon themselves like, oh, there's something wrong with me.
Yeah.
I, they teachers were upset at me today. It's not they don't get to have any accountability for
Hmm.
how they're acting or the type of environment they're creating, which
And there's no
then,
growth. There's no growth in that.
yeah, and then it fed into, I think, the corrosion of the work environment of the community. You could see so many people were starting to become frustrated or shutting that part of themselves down to accept,
Mm.
to just keep accepting, like, okay, well, they say it's not time yet, so I'll accept that. Like,
Mm.
so some even life decisions that people wanted to do, and the teachers would be like, oh, maybe you can wait, or don't go right now. you know don't do that
Wow.
thing, and then they're like, oh, well, the teacher said I probably shouldn't. And I
Yeah.
think it over time it just became where my inner rebel just started to come out, and I was just frustrated because I'm like, do what you want to do. Like,
Mm.
why are we just accepting this?
Yeah.
And so it was an internal tension because I was questioning myself while also feeling frustrated
Yeah.
myself. Yeah.
Yeah, what's really interesting, I don't think I've shared this with you before, is that when I first met them, I felt a pull. I was like, oh, I'm really curious. What are these people doing? It was before they moved up to where you met them.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and 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 then Spirit was like, here's the truth. Here's somebody. I met somebody who was best friends with one of the leaders in childhood.
Okay. Mm.
And somehow Spirit aligned that, and I got to dive deeper with him. And he was like, just be careful, be aware. And
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, this is so interesting. It was like this moment when I was like, oh, maybe I found a teacher. This other, spirit led me to have this conversation with the childhood best friend of one of the leaders, and he was like, just be aware and be very mindful around them, and that's all I needed. That's all I needed.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, some of my best friends were joining the cult, and like I was really curious, but but I had that reminder, like just don't just be the observer, watch it play out. And I even went and visited you guys just to
Mm.
like be in the energy and go to a concert and see what it was
Yeah.
all about. And it was beautiful on the outside, right? Like there was crystals, giant crystals everywhere, and everyone's wearing all white, and
Yeah.
everyone's so elegant, and most people have money, and they're like, presenting themselves as like higher echelon, right? Like we're the
Like elite.
the highest pinnacle of spirituality you can reach almost, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we're embodying our abundance, and we're also doing the practice, and we're embodying it, right? And that was the energy that I felt, at least, right? And the concert was beautiful, and the energy felt nice, but like there was something that told me like, just don't dive into this. This isn't your way. This isn't your path right now. And I just listened,
Yeah.
and I was like, okay. And then eventually, like a year or two later, everything crumbled up, right? And fell apart.
Yeah, so much led to that. It was such divine timing how that all fell apart and how so many of us had left just before it happened. And um, yeah, it's so beautiful on the surface. And they're so charming and really smart and knowing how to make you feel really special. Which is, the story of every cult.
Right.
And that's what lures you in. Of course, there was a slightly different dynamic where I wasn't ever giving money to them, and I was not just a follower. I was their employee, and I was getting
Mhm.
paid.
Yeah.
And I was actually getting paid decent. Like a lot of people weren't getting paid, or they were volunteers, or being underpaid because they really were devoted to them. And but I opened myself up and I was a part of the community experiences. And there were moments, where we had very heart opening, beautiful experiences. And
For
I
sure.
think those were the
Yes.
moments where I was a bit sold into the community, because I was like, oh, this felt so good. Like I just had a beautiful release, but looking back, like when you're open to an experience, like that can always happen. Is if you have an open heart, you're going to have those experiences,
Yeah.
So I think what happened was I found myself once again in this space of needing to be pure and perfect.
Hmm.
And it finally hit me through also kind of a warning, or through meeting Flowing River's teacher, actually. He invited us down to his place when his teacher was there. And I was already having doubts. I could already feel the frustration was coming out. When you're not dealing with something and you start reacting a bit to everything. And I think that was what was happening at the time. I could tell I was constantly frustrated and in a negative headspace,
Hmm.
and maybe a bit more reactive than I used to be.
Yeah.
And I went down there and I met his teacher, and I don't even know what it was he said, but he said something just that completely affirmed everything I was feeling. Like it was the first moment in months that I felt like someone could tell me I wasn't crazy
Mm.
for what I was feeling. That instead of being talked out of my true feelings, it felt like, okay, this wise old man is telling me like, you're right for how you feel,
Right.
And so it was just such a deep relief, and also a lot of tears, realizing how much I abandoned myself and was gaslighting myself into the experience. Yeah.
Yeah, and for those that don't know, Flowing River was one of the previous guests. We have two episodes on the podcast called "How to Find Your True Spiritual Teacher." So uh, he's a good friend of both of us, and that's who you mentioned was his teacher that he talks about in the episodes, and
Mm-hmm.
so that's really cool. So you got to meet his teacher, and did you ever continue to like follow up and study with him at all?
Yeah, after that, and then I left Ashland
Mhm.
basically, and I kept going back to the retreats at River's house.
Okay.
And every time his teacher was there, I'd go, and it was it was just a different type of community, a different type of space,
Hmm.
and I really appreciated his teachings. It was slightly different and more, based in traditional Sikhism,
Hmm.
and I think once again, I didn't want to like deflect into another teacher. So,
Right. Right.
and but I did really feel his words and his presence, and it was very grounded, and it felt it's just complete opposite of
Hmm.
what I was seeing and
Hmm.
experiencing in the cult. So it was really nice, and it was a beautiful time. I've seen him many times after that. But at the same time, I think that that whole experience really planted something in me
Yeah.
to that I know that Flowing River found his teacher, and he definitely, they clicked, and he brought so many beautiful experiences to that space. I think I was still to this day resistant in giving myself completely to any practice, really.
Right.
Yeah.
Which
So
which
and
makes
I've
sense.
always, yeah,
Which makes
yeah.
sense with your journey, you know?
Yeah, and it just feels like a repeating theme, because I
R-
feel like when I look back to my childhood, this is the same thing. And I think there is a deep reason for that, and why I do what I do and what I'm passionate about, because I feel that Jung's individuation work is all about becoming whole yourself, that going through your own journey, your
Mhm.
own internal hero's journey, facing off with, your own parts and accepting all of those parts. And what I find through being in spiritual communities like that, where they're very intense or very black and white
Mm-hmm.
and othering people outside of the community, that it's telling you, it's giving you a doctrine on how to behave, how to live your life. This is right. This is not right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something I think I feel deeply, passionately against a little bit,
Right.
because I just really feel that to be able to give people the space to be themselves completely and not feel that you have to shame any aspect of what you enjoy or what you love, I think is just so important. Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautifully said. That's beautifully said. I think I love seeing this version of you where you're really stepping into your power, and like I met you when you were in the cult. So it's really cool to see you on the other side of that and to really be empowering yourself and really stepping into your truth and what you know is right for you. I think that's really powerful and inspiring. And so I'm just curious, what was the downfall? I remember there was like an article, right, that came out about the cult.
Yeah, so internally there was a lot of us questioning
Hmm.
the experience. So I think it was already happening, underneath the surface,
Hmm.
where the internal structure was already crumbling and people were already thinking about leaving. And we started talking to each other more honestly.
Uh-huh.
Me and Flowing River and some other people started opening up to each other about what we felt wasn't right. So that happened, and then we kind of all quietly left. Within that same month that we all decided to leave, quit, end our connection to them, an article came out from a woman who I think specializes in researching cults. I can't remember her name, but it was, I believe, Guru magazine that published it.
Mm-hmm.
And the article was about one of the previous followers. And I think it was either her husband or friend was sharing that she had passed away, but that she had spent the last few years of her life giving them a lot of money to heal what she was going through.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was just a whole exposure piece about how everything that they offered to their followers, what they were selling, were in a way a scam because they were charging a lot of money.
Yeah.
And because of that article, more people followed the train of sharing their experiences and their stories. And I know that what circulated in the community was one of the teacher's ex-partner came out with an article as well about
Oh,
her
interesting.
experience. I don't know if you came across that.
I haven't.
Okay, that was a really interesting piece because it was her experience of being with him before he had met his,
Right.
twin flame
Right.
partner.
Yeah,
And
I remember hearing about her and how they did some work in Egypt, and that was like kind of the beginning of things before this
yeah,
cult started.
yeah, from her perspective, I think it gave a very personal experience of what happened and what shifted during that time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I really resonated with her experience as well. I think a lot of people did. Of I think for me personally, when I was in that deep Kundalini phase before this whole cult chapter,
Mm-hmm.
is that I also had a partner at the time that was very similar, very into similar things, wanted to start a similar type of group or like brotherhood. And I think it was a really tough relationship for me at the time. So I realized how much it fed into my own unhealed parts of attracting that relationship, of needing to be perfect, the criticism, the unhealed parts of feeling like I had to, yeah, show up in a certain way,
Mm-hmm.
or that. And so I think it reminded me a little bit of that sometimes it's easy for I think a lot of women, I don't know if you're in the spiritual community, can relate to that experience
Mm-hmm.
of, and men too, for that matter. I'm sure you have as well, having either friends or partners or mentors that I think separated you from yourself,
Mm-hmm.
to feel like you had to push yourself beyond that. And so she shared a little bit about I think how he was seeking something, shinier and more perfect. And that
Mm.
was what caused the separation of their relationship. Like
Oh, okay.
almost like she couldn't match what he was looking for.
I see.
And I think that's just such a story that I hear so often in the
Mm.
community of this seeking perfection. And that was an article I wrote recently, was how I witnessed this in the spiritual community, that because we're seeking perfection in our practice, in our way of life, that we bring that into our relationships. And then we don't let people be human, like, or all of themselves. We can't have these emotional, hard conversations and actually grow a relationship together. Rather it's like you have to show up in all these ways, or you have to be as healed as me, or it's not going to work.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the paradox of that is like when you fully accept somebody how they are, they're gonna match your frequency anyways, or or the frequencies are gonna just push the people apart. So as long as one person maintains that frequency of like I'm and that commitment to grow together, right? Like that's an important piece, right? Like both parties committing to be like, we're going to choose each other every day. We're going to grow with each other every day. And I want to be the best version of myself every day. Not everybody has those intentions, right? But if those three things are in the forefront, then the relationship can really grow and expand because that's the foundation of it, you know?
I think a key point of what you said is that willingness to grow.
Hmm.
And the willingness to grow is realizing you're not perfect, and you're not
Right.
at this place that is just higher or better, than someone else. Like, oh, I actually have flaws too,
Hmm.
and I get to work on those things. So
Right. Right. And like in those relationships, the the other individual becomes a true mirror and shows everything that we need to see and all of our blind spots. And my partner is real good, real good at it, you know? And it can be
that's
really,
that's it. Yeah.
yeah,
Like if you can't look at yourself, if you
mhm,
can't look at your shadow, and you
yeah,
see that in your partner, then yeah, you're gonna be like, oh no, like you're the problem,
right, right. It's really,
Yeah.
that's why a lot of relationships fall apart. Or I've in the spiritual community, I've heard a lot of people be like, that's too much, that's too triggering for me. I can't be around it. So they run. They go to another country, they go travel, they do whatever, but they're just running from themselves. The next partner is gonna show them the same thing. Like,
Mm.
it's like I believe that those things you can't hide from because it's better to just face them and address it. Otherwise, what's the point of being here? That's part of the earth school we're in,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, and it's really hard because it's really hard for the ego to sit there and be like, "Oh my gosh, this is a part of me,"
Yeah.
and it can be so triggering. It's hard at first to accept that because you're like, "Oh, I don't feel like that's me,"
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
to
Well,
see it is really humbling. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. It's super humbling. It's super humbling. And sometimes it's a lot, especially if like there's stress on top of life and a lot of responsibilities. It's like, I gotta sit with this now, It's like, okay,
Mhm.
but what's gonna happen if I don't, right? It's gonna just come back around potentially worse or at a more difficult time, and it's better to just deal with it and face it and heal it as much of it as possible. And I believe we're given these tools so that we can sit with it in the moment and just lean in.
Yeah, I another aspect of that turning point of realizing what was going on, because sometimes you're feeling these things, like when I was in the cult, I'm feeling frustrated, I'm having these thoughts, but sometimes it's not clear exactly what is it, what's not working, what's not
Yeah.
clicking. And a moment hit me where I think is something I just want to bring up. It's really easy to come into either the dark night of the soul or a period of almost like depression where certain things don't feel as interesting to you,
Hmm.
or you don't have that passion, that life force flowing through you. And I think it's a slow process that dawns on you. And so at that time I was starting to feel lackluster. Like, I'm not really feeling excited about anything anymore. And at the time, I didn't know why. I thought maybe this is just life now. So and, and what hit me was that suppression of self, that needing to be perfect, wearing a mask constantly when I was in that community was quite literally like dimming my life force and my light.
Mm.
And recognizing that allowed me a moment of grief for myself, of uh, yeah, feeling the grief of how I've silenced myself,
Mm-hmm.
how I didn't let myself be heard or speak my needs. And that moment of just recognizing that and being able to just cry it out and feel like, oh my gosh, like this is what's been happening. I've been neglecting myself. I think that really empowered me to walk away.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Thank you for sharing that experience and that story. I think it's, really important for people to hear, especially if they're looking for a community, right? Looking for more than just, you know, like a place that can physically hold them, like in a specific location, or looking to travel somewhere, and it's just so it's kind of sad for me to watch all these documentaries about all these spiritual leaders and all these people that have created these cults, and then you find stuff out about them that is really disturbing and really dark and like unintegrated and unembodied, and then it's another layer of the reality kind of disintegrating, and I wish that people really took the time to look at their shadows and really dive into their stuff and find healthy ways of releasing anger and releasing frustration and sadness, and men, in particular, being open to feeling and like crying and releasing. And that's why I'm so passionate about men's work and about helping men, because it's the same thing with women, but women naturally are more able to access those aspects, and society hasn't pushed that
Mm-hmm.
down so much inside the feminine. There's aspects that have been pushed down on both sides, but that in particular is a big cause of why the world is how it is today, because the leaders haven't done any shadow work. They haven't integrated these parts of self that are like acting on these ways that inside themselves is perpetually feeding and causing more and more chaos and more uh, darkness to fester.
Yeah, and it's hard because the journey of someone in power, they have to want that position to get there
Yeah,
most of the time. So
yeah,
I feel like there's a strong correlation to that story that we see. And on a greater zoomed out cosmic scale, I think that so many of these experiences, as traumatic as they can be, are also just perfect because they were necessary
yeah,
for to go through that or to have that illusion shattered.
yeah,
I know that there's some people who even say that that's why certain things happened with cult leaders being dismantled from their pedestal, that it was because that it needed to create that fracture in people, in a divine cosmic way, like everything's faded type of way.
hmm
And there is a part of me that believes in that, and I think that's where astrology comes in.
yeah. This is a good segue.
Yeah. Yeah, is it you see that when you're looking at someone's chart, you can often bring up things like, oh, I can look at the fourth house. Was your mom like this? Or maybe you had an absent mother, or oh, your father was there and this is how he is. And maybe you had like siblings, or you didn't, or you're left on your own. And those things I can bring up just looking at someone's chart. We're
Hmm.
like, oh, yeah, like that's true. My mom was like that. Or, my childhood was like that. And that's really crazy to think about because that's almost like proof that there's destiny and fate. But there's still a little bit of guesswork and it's not going to be exact. I can't say exactly how things happen, but I mean, I know there are definitely like Vedic astrologers out there who probably could.
Hmm.
I'm not at that level, but enough to mention like, oh, this is how you are in relationships, or a couple of years ago maybe you had this creative awakening. We can see that in the transits and the way the planets are moving through the charts. So I feel like astrology is really affirming in that everything is meant to be. Everything I've experienced, all the, the way I was raised, like this, my story of being raised Buddhism and skeptical, like that shows up in my chart where my Chiron is.
Hmm.
Chiron is the asteroid that's the wounded healer.
Hmm.
And where it is often shows where your most intense wounds or traumas show up in life. And my Chiron is in the house of religion and beliefs and spirituality and also higher
Mm.
education. So it's like right there, everything we've talked about, is captured in that. We
Hmm.
can see even like if someone has Chiron in their seventh house, that a lot of their deepest pain or hurt came from partnerships or relationships, or maybe it was from the mother because it was in Cancer. So things like that. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So for those people for some people, this may sound like a foreign language, all the things you just
Yeah.
said, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I can break it down a little bit. But yeah.
yeah. So, like, let's just break it down, like the different types of astrology, and
Mhm.
then, like, you know, when somebody's looking at someone's chart, like yourself, how is everything organized, right? Like, you have
Yeah.
the planets and the houses. Like, can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah. I could, maybe I'll just like have this notebook.
Yeah.
That kind of helps. But typically there's a circle
Okay.
and that is like a classic chart and it's cut into 12 pieces. Most importantly, it's cut into 4 quadrants. So
Hmm.
this is your ascendant. That's what people know as their rising sign.
So like for those that are just listening, it's on basically the
Oh,
left side of the circle, right?
yeah. So there's a wheel. Yep. And when you're facing the wheel on the left side, that's known as the ascendant or the rising.
Okay.
And that what that is it's the sign that is on the horizon when you were born.
Okay.
That's why time is important when it comes to the structure of houses.
Okay.
You can still get accurate planet placements if you didn't know what time you were born,
Hmm.
but to know where the planets are in the chart, that's where the timing comes in.
Okay.
So you have the ascendant, and then each quadrant has 3. So we have the 12 signs, we have the 12 houses. So each one of the signs connect to one of the houses.
Okay. And when you're talking about signs, you're talking about
Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, and then we have Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces. So that's
oh,
the order.
okay. What about the 13th sign? That's
Oh yeah, Ophiuchus, I think that's what
yeah.
it is. Yeah, that's in between Sagittarius and Scorpio.
Okay.
I don't use that. It's not typically talked about in a lot of astrology. If you look
Uh-huh.
at astrologers, they don't typically bring it up too often, but you will have some people who will use that.
Okay.
And I know a little bit about it, but not enough because I don't work
Okay.
with it.
Okay.
Um, but in Vedic astrology, for example, there's 27 stars. So those are called the nakshatras. What that does essentially is breaks up the 12 signs that we know into 2 more parts each.
Okay. Okay. And
So then
Vedic
it gets
Vedic
it gets even more
astrology
specific.
Vedic astrology stems from India, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and it incorporates the Hindu myths.
Okay. And are
So all
they
the stars are different Hindu deities or
Oh, interesting.
symbols. Yeah.
Okay. So each one of the stars represents a deity.
Or a symbol, and then there's a deity that's like connected to it often.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Kind of like how we have. So you think of Western astrology, it's connected to the Greek mythology.
Hmm.
We have in Sagittarius and the Centaur,
Right.
or Virgo and like Pallas, Athena, those figures.
Yeah, yeah.
So
When you look at the stars, especially on the star apps, you can see the actual like Greek mythological creatures, right? And characters
yeah,
that are very much deeply ingrained into the way that the star systems are organized, which, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
yeah, and there's tropical, and which is what most people know, and sidereal
Okay.
astrology. So those are the main two split modes. Vedic is the same as sidereal in the sense
Okay.
that it's the same timing, same shifts of planets and signs.
Okay.
And to calculate that, it's basically 24 degrees back from Western or tropical astrology. So there's degrees. Basically, every planet has, its orbit. So it shifts a degree every certain amount of time. Like the sun shifts 1 degree every day. The
Oh,
moon shifts a degree every, like, I think 4 hours. I don't know if I got that right. But basically, every 2.5 days, the moon is in one sign.
okay.
Or yes, I was like, wait, did I get that wrong? Yeah, and so, and then the sun changes a degree of that sign every day, but every 28 to 30 days it enters, or sorry, every 30 days it enters the next sign. So that's what degrees are, to put it in a simple way to understand. It shows exactly like where the planets are, and there's 30 degrees in every house,
Okay.
making up the 360 of the
Okay, so
chart.
there's 12 houses, 30 degrees in each house. Each
Yeah.
house represents one of the astrological signs. Uh,
It connects. It's very similar. Like
okay.
first house, for example, Aries, the ascendant, my rising, my personality, what I see. Aries is the self, ego, identity, asserting yourself.
Hmm.
It's also springtime, it's birth, it's red. So it's like the newness,
Mm.
youthfulness. If you think of Aries, it's someone who's very assertive and maybe reactionary, which is
Hmm.
what a child would be like.
Uh-huh.
So that's the first sign.
And it's a
And
fire
it's
sign,
also,
right?
and it's fire sign. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And then the first house is also the house of self, ego, identity, personality.
Ah, okay.
So you can see there's a correlation to the order of the signs and the order of the houses.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's an
Yeah,
easy
this
way
is
to
real.
understand for someone who's new to reading a chart. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. There's a question that's like burning to come through, which is
Mhm.
when the pyramids were built, they were aligned with Osiris, I think. And they
Yeah, it's
showed,
Sirius, I think.
yeah,
Or
Sirius.
yeah, or the
Um,
constellation of Osiris. I'm not sure. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think it was Sirius, and so they've shown that now it's like a few degrees off because it's been
Mhm.
so long. So I'm just
Yeah.
really curious how that would play into your
Yeah.
astrological
So
reading.
that's where sidereal and Vedic astrology come in.
Okay.
Sidereal and Vedic astrology is more accurate to where the stars actually are.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So the Western astrology that most of us know of and practice is actually not accurate to where the stars currently are.
Okay.
I can't quite like that. That's one thing I haven't really nailed, like to explain why it is that we still use it. you know,
Right.
it still correlates, and that's why I've kind of made a slight shift into learning more about Vedic and sidereal astrology,
Hmm.
because I find there is a lot of accuracy when you go over to that.
So
Um,
I mean, also
yeah,
like realistically, we should have a 13-month calendar and each calendar
right.
should be 28 days, right? Like that would be
Yeah,
the ideal calendar for us. And is there an astrology that lines up with that?
I think the lunar calendar. I'm pretty sure the lunar calendar is pretty accurate to that.
Okay.
I don't know too much, but I know because in Vietnamese and Chinese traditions, we celebrate the Lunar New Year. And that changes every year.
Okay.
And it's more in accordance with the lunar cycle.
Okay.
That's why it's called the lunar calendar. Yeah.
Okay. So as you were sharing, like why we're still practicing these things if we're not literally aligned with those stars anymore, uh,
Mhm.
it makes me think that the collective consciousness is maybe playing a role in how things are playing out because so many people are still believing in this and they're
Yeah.
sharing it. And now with social media, it's like if you share something, and it goes viral or a lot of people see it, it can shift the perspective of the majority of the consciousness, and then that might play a role in it. What do you think about
Yes,
that?
I think that is definitely what I've considered. I've
Okay.
considered that in a way, Western or the Gregorian calendar, it's an accepted mode of thinking. Like anything that's accepted, like you said, it does create the structure of our reality. And sometimes people see it as like maybe it's more of a matrix reality. Like, we're choosing to subscribe to this ideology when there is a more technically physically accurate one. So I think there is a degree of truth to that. It's
Hmm.
not something I've thought about too much, but I think it is a part of why I've wanted to learn more with Vedic and sidereal and to incorporate it more, to consider it. But I
Hmm.
think there's truth to Western astrology because of what you said. It's still affecting us
Hmm.
because so many of us are choosing to use it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, it still blows my mind, like that people are saying, okay, right now the moon is in this quadrant or in this sign, right? And this is what's going to happen, but actually in the stars, it's a completely different sign and a completely different experience that if people actually realize that it's only in that quadrant because of our calendar,
Yeah.
right?
Well, I think this is something that comes up when I teach astrology. This question comes up a lot.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that it can be seen rather than two modes of astrology as another mode, like lens of divination. Because when we look at human design or gene keys, they're not really based off the stars per se, but they are based off of the same components of time that you were born and a certain structure of the world,
Mhm.
the I Ching. So it's kind of like a mechanism that we're choosing to use and view the world through.
Mhm.
It, and they all kind of hit whatever one you choose. If you choose that practice, it's going to resonate because it's still filtering the same reality through it. It's just a
Yeah.
different way of reading it. It's like if you choose to read tea leaves, or you choose to read coffee grounds.
Yeah.
One's not more accurate than the other. It's just a different
Yeah.
way of looking at it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting because it is, from my perspective, all about frequency. So if and also alignment, right? Like I believe a lot of things align and come into my life at the times when I'm vibrating in that frequency and also ready to receive that, right? So like the things about the eclipses and the eclipse energies that are happening right now and Mercury retrograde, those types of things were never in my reality before my awakening. But now that I'm aware of it, I watch my phone glitching out. I watch, certain communications getting off. So because I have an awareness to it, it seems like it's more present in my subconscious, and because of that it almost manifests because of that, or the manifestation is happening on its own, and this is just the next layer or level of frequency, right?
That's one of my favorite questions is something happening because we're thinking about it and we're manifesting it, or are we thinking about it because it's going to happen?
Right.
And I think it's both
Uh-huh.
because if we're not, in a linear time and we are picking things up, so we are going to be thinking about things before they happen. But if we're aware that it's going to happen, then obviously we're connecting it to that. So I
Right.
think they're both happening at the same time. And I
Yeah.
think I see what you mean. Like before you were aware of Mercury retrograde, that when these glitches, if they did happen, maybe we wouldn't have thought about it so much, or we wouldn't have immediately clocked, oh, Mercury's retrograde, that's why it's
Hmm.
happening.
Hmm.
And it doesn't matter. And I think that's something I want to plant, is that I love astrology because it's so affirming of things. It's like, oh, I'm not crazy. Like, yeah, like it's so cool to have my life story or what I just experienced yesterday to be reflected in this thing.
Hmm.
It's like some kind of, science that I get to actually see my life playing out. And it just, I guess it gives meaning and depth, and it gives a sense of like just affirmation, like, oh, okay, oh, maybe I was feeling a bit, emotional yesterday. Oh, there was an eclipse, or this moon was in my eighth house. Like, of course, I was feeling very emotional. So it feels comforting. And I think
Yeah.
that's why I like it. And why I like any divination mode is it's comforting and it's affirming. But we already know these things. We're going to experience them regardless of what if we know it or not.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
You know, uh I think it's fascinating. I think it's fascinating that and there's this saying that millionaires, oh man, how does the quote go?
Oh, I know what you're talking about. It's
Yeah,
millionaires don't use astrology, billionaires do.
right.
Or they don't. Oh, millionaires don't have astrologers. Billionaires do.
Yeah, the difference between a
Yeah.
millionaire and a billionaire is that billionaires have astrologers. And it
Mhm.
makes sense because it's almost like a blueprint that is almost like easily accessible. Like somebody could go on the internet and find their astrological chart and find someone like yourself to read it for them.
Mhm.
And like that's relatively accessible for most people,
Yeah.
right? And I think it's fascinating because if if this reality is already kind of predetermined, right? Like, let's say I'm predetermined to date like my wife at some point or the woman I'm with, like, and the seed was planted, let's say in the dream state, like while I'm dreaming that this person and I, or even before I came into this body, I made these soul contracts, right? And then I believe that in the dream state, there's like these little, at least I think this might be happening, that in the dream state, we're communicating with other people and beings that are helping us remind us of these contracts that we have with people. And so let's say that I have a contract with someone, and in that moment, I'm manifesting someone with a very specific physique because I want to have that human experience to date someone with a very specific physique, right? And then I meet someone and I'm like, Spirit will show me my next partner because they're going to have this physique. But really, I had manifest like that contract was already in place. And that's why my mind wanted me to manifest that. Does that make sense?
Right. 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 Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that determination goes into it, and that ties into what you just said, what we said earlier, like that it's being shown to you because it's already meant to be.
Right.
That you're not in a way choosing it. And so I think that brings in the conversation of fatalism and free will. It's like, okay, do we not have free will? But I think again, it's both. There is, we can look at the chart as a structure, almost like a sacred geometry or geometrical structure that the world is operating in, or we could think of it even like the internet and how things are connected in a specific way. There is a science to it. There is, you know, mathematics that we can bring together, but in between that is the other components, the creative expression, the way that it plays out. I think
Hmm.
that is still going to be different. It's not like we're mechanically fulfilling these fate lines. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, it always trip like makes it's fascinating for me because I mean, I'm really curious how these billionaires and like what how in depth they're going and what exactly they're looking for, right? Like there's probably ways to look at your astrological chart and be like, okay, this is a good time to invest. This is a good time to
Mhm.
buy or to sell, these kind of things,
Yeah.
right?
There are astrologers that consult the stock market.
Hmm.
And I know I've heard of a few people who do that. And that's one of my favorite things to do in readings is to do transit readings to see what's going on currently and timing. I recently had a reading with someone where we were choosing a specific date for her to do something. So we were
Mm.
looking, oh, are the planets, supporting that this day? Or maybe we should wait till after this period.
Hmm.
Another thing, like a pattern that has shown up in astrology, is that when people get married during Venus retrogrades, that typically those marriages don't last.
Ah.
And so it's just little things like that. And of course, you can't always control it. But I think that's probably where the billionaire astrology quote comes in, is that in a sense you are maximizing your potential. You
Hmm.
are kind of choosing or accelerating your timeline by either knowing when to go or when to wait. And at the same, also, if someone's worth investing in, whether romantically or business wise,
Hmm.
or learning a lesson, even like, why did this happen? Okay, I needed to experience this, or maybe this is why it happened. Um,
Okay. Yeah,
yeah.
that makes a lot of sense. And
And
so,
oh, sorry, I was trying to think of one more thing, and it's when I do readings, I love looking at purpose and North Node and South Node.
yeah.
And I think that's my favorite focus when I look at someone's chart is, oh, this is your purpose. And I think that's what drew me to astrology. What draws most people to astrology is you want to learn more about yourself.
Yeah.
And it's fun. And it feeds the ego to know more about yourself. Oh, this is how I am. And so that's what it draws so many people to astrology. So when you look at the North Node or you see, okay, I look at it kind of like reading a cup of tea leaves. I see that there's a lot of planets in one house, or there's a certain line of energy in this house. You start to see like, oh, this is going to be a big aspect of your life, or you're meant to pursue these things in life. Like I
Uh-huh.
had an astrologer once look at my chart and he saw that I had like a ninth house stellium. So he said, higher education or religion and belief systems is like going to be a lifelong pursuit for you.
Ah,
And and I'm back in school now studying philosophy. So
nice.
it's it's in that he told me that like 6 years ago. So
Wow.
it's funny how that plays out. Of course, no, does knowing that change anything? No, but it helps reassure the choices I'm making so I'm not doubting or second guessing myself. Because I think why spirituality and these divination tools are so powerful are like recognizing synchronicities or being able to, um, have awareness of these things, is that we're not living life just frustrated because we don't know why something's happening, or
Mm.
maybe we feel like we don't know when to let go because we're like, no, I really want this thing. And why? Like maybe because I wanted to make my parents proud, or I need to make a lot of money. And to be able to have that muscle or awareness to be like, okay, that's not meant for me. Actually, this thing wants me. And maybe my personality mind is like, no, that's too scary, or I don't want to do that. And to just see in your chart, like, no, this is actually your gift and this is what you're meant to do. And it's just reassuring. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that aspect is really, really powerful. And as you were speaking, it made me think about how even though there's this blueprint, which seems to be for every individual here, at least every human, uh, even though there's these blueprints that we have that we can tap into, there's also these moments that spirit just intervenes. And
Mm-hmm.
and it's undeniable, like the synchronicities, um, like these moments of so much. It feels miraculous. It feels like a miracle sometimes, right? Where I'll be driving. Like one example I thought of and had a vision of as you were speaking was as I was driving one time in San Diego, this car like breaks in front of me and I'm like almost forced to look at their license plate, right? And then I see this angel number, right? Which I ended up looking up. I don't remember what it said, but it was really reaffirming to what I was going through in my life and what I needed to hear at that moment. And then all of a sudden another car will like cut in and it'll have the same exact number on their license plate. And it's not, and it wasn't like one of the 333s or 444s. It was like something like four different numbers that I needed to look up to get like a very specific message. And so those moments, my soul and my spirit just like live for, because to me, it's like that is so exciting that spirit is communicating, and these angelic realms and all these uh, aspects are guiding and helping me and like steer the ship almost, you know?
It's hard to deny when it's right in front of you.
Right.
And I think that that's what I feel like I also was so excited and thrilled about. I mean, still, when synchronicities like that show up, you're like, oh, you can't make that up. I didn't just imagine that. Like that just
Right.
happened,
Right.
So I think that those are also affirming moments. And I was going to say that those moments do show up in your transits. That
Oh,
often you have intense downloads. Like when I had also another really intense awakening moment, or when things happen, things intervene with people, that you can look up the chart for that day and you'll
wow.
see, how the planets were interacting, that there were certain channels of energy that were sparking that was creating that moment in time.
Wow.
Typically, when I had a lot of ego deaths, Pluto had just entered my first house. Pluto is the planet of death, rebirth, and transformation, and the first house is the house of self and identity.
Hmm.
So that was just another thing that correlated to a moment that I was having, or
Wow.
even now. So a lot of people are feeling the shift of Saturn and Neptune into Aries after Neptune has been in Pisces for the last like 10 years, and Saturn's been in Pisces for the last 2.5 years. So feeling that shift into Aries, that's the complete reset, because we're going back to the beginning of the zodiac. Aries is so different from Pisces, where it's very direct, it takes action. So the last decade of just dreaming or even exploring spirituality, people are being asked to assert themselves and like take action to actually make things happen
Hmm.
physically.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff is really interesting, because then you have these I can't help but just observe how during these eclipses and things like that, there's usually a lot of bombings and a lot of like
Hmm.
all these like crazy turmoils that seem to happen on these dates. And I'm like, okay, here it comes again, and like, and it's almost like,
And breakups.
yeah, it's like it just it's like undeniable, and it's like such a strong force that it just permeates society, and it permeates every every individual, regardless of whether they're aware of it or not, you know?
You can look at history like revolution. A lot of people are talking about that because Pluto moved into Aquarius, and how the last time that happened, there was the French Revolution. And so same with Neptune and Saturn conjunct, there was like a civil war that started around that time. So a lot of larger planets are making similar aspects or transitions to past times where we had big change happening in the world. And you can almost see that pattern if you look all the way, to the beginning of time. You'll see when these moments happened, or like how the birth of a nation has its own chart, and America's going through its Pluto return. Pluto returns typically have indicated in the past that a fall of a nation, like Rome has fallen around that
Mm,
same time period. That typically that's how long a dynasty or a nation lasts before something changes. It doesn't mean that it's like going to be destroyed, but it's definitely going to be different.
wow.
Yeah.
And we just started that.
A couple of years ago,
Okay.
actually.
Okay.
Yeah, we can
Around
kind
the
of see
time
that with
Trump got
civil
elected.
unrest. Yeah, I mean, we can see like civil unrest. I mean, not even this is an astrological take, but you can look at people who don't even believe in these things. They're observing history and they're seeing patterns, and there's actually indicators of when a nation is downfalling, and we're hitting a lot of those indicators. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this brings up the question of like your opinion about like the 5D and the 3D, right? Like those all seem like 3D experiences to me. uh,
Hmm.
in the
Mhm.
sense of like the vibration of the third dimension. And then in the fifth dimension, there's other things happening. So does astrology have any like differentiation in that?
Yeah, yeah, because with all these things happening, it can seem all doom and gloom, but there's also spiritual awakening happening alongside that in parallel to it.
Yeah.
So the planets also show an awakening happening. Like it's showing how new ideas are coming through. And I'm generally optimistic. So I don't like to focus on those things typically.
Yeah.
Um, I'm acknowledging that they're real, but I think that focusing on it doesn't really help
Hmm.
typically. Even
Hmm.
if you want to change something, it depends on how much impact can you really have, versus just if you show up, living your life purpose, you're helping out more than, you know, anything else that you
Yeah,
could
and
be doing.
also
So, yeah.
the internal work, right? Like what am I feeling around this? What is coming up inside me? And then shifting that, it has a huge impact because we're all one, and it has this like effect of like rippling out at exponential speed and time, right? Quote unquote, to the whole planet and to the
Yeah,
to the cosmos.
a lot of spiritual teachers have mentioned that, like the impact of your awakening or your self-work does to everyone around you or to the
Hmm.
world.
Hmm.
But even on a less spiritual lens, they say, to work on like typical, like a psychologist or a teacher would say, the family unit is what creates society. And so to treat your family and your friends and your partners well, to have a positive impact there is what builds the rest of society and
Mm.
the collective
Hmm.
too. So even on a physical, psychological level, it's true.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, for sure. For sure. It's super interesting. I had a question about the nodes. So are there only is there four nodes, like north, south, east, west, or how many nodes are there?
That's so funny because I've never thought about an east and a west node, but I wonder if there are some. But
Uh-huh.
no, it's just north and south
Okay.
typically. Yeah.
Okay, so on the
Uh,
circle they would be at the top and on the bottom.
yeah, or wherever they are in your chart. It just depends
Oh,
for
okay.
you.
Okay.
Yeah. So the nodes, they don't like asteroids and many fixed stars, they don't technically exist physically. They're more like because they're fixed stars, they're just points in the astrological system that mean
Okay.
certain things. And they have their own, they're almost like operating, I guess you could say, in the 5D because they're not really physically here.
Okay. Okay.
But they have influence. And the north and the south node is a very important aspect of the chart because it shows a big part of what you're learning to lean into, what you're moving towards. And then the south node shows what you've mastered in a past life or just what you're really comfortable with already.
Okay.
But it can also represent past life karma, things that that's going to be carried with you. But the thing is, it's not about moving away from your south node into the north node. You're learning to strike a balance between the two.
Okay.
And in Vedic astrology, it's the head and the tail of the dragon, Rahu and Ketu.
Okay.
So there's a mythology tied in with that as well.
Okay.
Just like the head is and then the body, like the physical part. So it's like the desires. You could even look at it like lower chakras, like
Right.
root desires, what I've been conditioned with, what my desires are, where my power lies versus what I'm striving towards, what I'm opening up. That's a way to view the south and the north node.
Oh, that's so interesting. I've never heard about the dragon on there. Um,
And they're always going to be opposing, right? Because they're opposite axis. So there's axis in like when there's a full moon, the sun and moon are opposite. So the north and the south node are always going to be opposite signs in the
uh,
chart.
okay.
So if you had a north node in Aries, your south node would be in Libra. And so they're completely opposite signs.
Okay. So the moon and the sun are opposites, but what happens when there's a lunar or a solar eclipse?
That's a new moon. Every new moon is the sun and the moon are together.
Oh, okay.
And that's why it's dark.
Okay.
Yeah. So
What
basically when sun
okay.
moon conjunct, it's a new moon. When they're opposing, it's a full moon.
What about a solar eclipse?
It's the same, but it's slightly different because it lines up with the earth, and that's what
Right.
causes, yeah,
Okay.
that's what causes the eclipsing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So just so I'm like caught up with all this, we have the 12 houses, which are all connected to the astrological signs. Then we have the north and the south node. And then we have the planets.
Yeah,
Um,
and those are can be separated too. We have personal planets, transpersonal planets. Transpersonal planets are more generational, planets that take like 10 years to change. So we see that as planets that have generational impact. When we can see the shifts in decades or in generations, like literally Gen X, Y, Z, we'll notice planets like Pluto having, rulership in a certain sign during that period. So they're like Pluto, Neptune, Uranus, they call them transpersonal because they're more generational impact, collective impact, than personal impact.
okay.
Whereas Sun, Moon, Mercury, well, Sun and Moon are known as the luminaries. And then we have Mercury, Mars, and Venus, relationship, how you act, how you speak, what you think. Those are more, pertain to your personality. Yeah.
Okay. What about Pluto? Like, is does it matter if it's? I guess it doesn't really matter if it's a star. There's been all these, over the years.
Oh,
When I was a
yeah.
kid, it was a planet. Now it's not anymore. And like,
Mhm.
I'm sure that has some sort of impact if we're thinking about the collective viewpoint of it. But astrologically speaking, it's still going to be having the same effects, right?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we include it. So I think like earlier we said if we're acknowledging it, then it is having impact. Especially I noticed it has a really strong impact where it is in your chart. We'll
Hmm.
notice a lot of change and deaths and rebirths in that area of our life during that time period. And we'll notice it collectively as well. With Pluto shifting into Aquarius. It's funny because didn't it recently move back into not being a planet again
Yeah, I
recently,
don't think
right?
it is.
So I think that's kind of funny because we could look at Pluto shifting into Aquarius having effect with that because Aquarius is elusive, it's strange, it's different. It's the sign of Aquarius is like unique. It's a change maker. It
Uh-huh.
wants to be different.
Yeah.
So it's almost like Pluto. We could look at it. It's like rebelling, and it's like I'm not going to be a part of the planets.
Pluto's a teenager right now
Yeah, yeah.
in his goth
That's very
phase.
Aquarius energy. Yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
funny.
Pluto's like I'm out of here.
Yeah.
um, which yeah, and Pluto and Capricorn, for example, for a decade, it rules over structure, tradition, doing things a certain way. So Aquarius is kind of breaking the mold a little bit,
Hmm.
which that's what we're going to see, politically or personally.
Okay.
People not valuing so much traditional forms of building wealth, maybe, or depending on where it is for you. But collectively, we see a shift of focus because Pluto's like intensity. If you think of
Hmm.
Scorpio,
Hmm.
it's like diving into the depths. If we're diving into Aquarius, we're diving into community values, the future, invention, innovation, and those themes.
Love it.
Which,
Love it.
like
That's what
AI,
it's
for
about.
example, can be
Yeah.
reflected in
Yeah.
Aquarius. Yeah.
Yeah. What happened around 2020 with the planets when AI came online? It seemed like it was like COVID's baby was AI.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think I knew, and I don't remember. It's been a minute since I've thought about this.
Uh-huh.
Um, I know I've looked at it, but I can't think of it right now with 2020. I know that was such a shift. I think Pluto was still in, but it was in the final degrees
Okay.
of Capricorn.
Okay.
I remember what was going on personally, but I can't remember what it was collectively because I'm typically with my astrology work, I don't do I don't do horoscope updates too often. Like I don't do weekly astrology updates in the world too often, where a lot of astrologers do focus on those things.
Yeah.
I like to focus more on personal
Okay.
aspects, or I'll do full and new moon readings to kind of help people focus on what it is that's coming up for them. So I think I'm much more of a personal astrologer than what is happening collectively, because there are definitely so many astrological experts out there that focus on like world events.
All right. And
Yeah.
you have a YouTube channel?
You know what? It's not active right now. I've been meaning to reactivate it. I
Okay.
did post a few videos there a few years ago, and yeah, my intention is to reactivate it. I have lately I started a new Instagram where I'm posting my new and full moon posts,
Yeah, I
and
saw
I
that.
have a blog where I post more of my philosophical essays.
Hmm.
So those are the two. I've been doing a lot of writing, but getting myself in front of the camera has been the challenge recently.
Okay. Well,
I'm coming out of a hermit period, so
yeah, well,
yeah.
I'm a huge, support for you to put yourself out there because you're so knowledgeable with this and so many people will listen to your astrological readings and I think like you're so talented in that and have so much wisdom and knowledge with it that I think it's like the world needs it. This is like important.
Yeah, I know. I feel that call for sure.
Mhm.
I did used to post a few videos on TikTok, and they did do pretty well. So I tried to, when you like post stuff and you try to see like what are people replying to, what are they interacting with? Okay, that's like let's keep doing more of that. So,
Okay. Yeah,
but I've been big life transitions and moving, so I'm getting comfortable and finding that flow again.
cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I'm looking forward to that, and maybe by the time this video comes out, we'll be able to collab on YouTube too, so that we can people
Yeah,
can
I mean, I
find you.
have the channel, so we can, collab, and then I'll just, kickst revive the channel
Yeah,
from that.
cool.
Um, but lastly, if you don't have any other questions, I wanted to just quickly segue from astrology just into the connection of the I Ching.
Yeah, yeah. I was gonna say
Yeah,
that would be a great transition there.
yeah, because we were talking about, looking at or using astrology as a consultation tool and how billionaires, right, would have astrologers. And that makes me think of the I Ching because emperors would have advisors and the advisors use the I Ching. And when
Mm,
you read the I Ching, a lot of the languaging is translated from ancient China. I mean, this is such an old divination modality that all the translations are from I don't know the name of the dynasties, but a long time ago.
hmm hmm.
And because of that, the translations often reference war or like war strategy,
Yeah,
armies, and you'll see that sprinkled throughout a lot of I Ching translations. So there's many versions now that speak more to the modern world or more to psychological self-help.
hmm
You'll notice like there's advice or talk of like strategy when it comes to the family unit, when it comes to the army, when it comes to the community, because it was a time I think of Confucianism, which is very much so the foundation of like your family is really important, duty is really important,
hmm.
like war strategy or like being really intelligent with how you do business is really important. So we see that as a foundation of the I Ching, and I think that influences the way it feels or the advice that you get.
Right.
Like to me, I always tell my friends that I go to the I Ching if I'm looking for like old grandpa advice. like
Okay.
like I'm looking for serious advice,
Yeah.
Whereas you go to your oracle cards when you need to be nurtured and told that everything's okay.
Okay. Okay. So just for people that aren't familiar at all with the I Ching, can you give like the basics of what it is, how it works, what it looks like? I'm having a hard time remembering like what it actually looks like.
So there's traditionally yarrow sticks. It's like a grouping of sticks that they throw on the ground, which I don't know how to do I Ching that way, but that's a very old school version. Or it could be bones or stones like runes.
Okay.
They'd throw on the ground and they would read it. The I Ching itself has 64 hexagrams. Some people might have seen this if you're into human design. There's hexagrams listed in the circle chart of gene keys and human design.
Okay.
Um, and so there's like the gates of human design are from the I Ching.
Okay.
And so there's 64 hexagrams. Each hexagram has 6 lines. So there's 2 trigrams stacked on top of each other. The
Okay.
trigrams are made up of elements: fire, water, heaven, wind, earth, things like that.
Okay.
And all those combined, so it'll be like fire on top of water, or fire on top of lake, wind under lake. And those make up all the 64 hexagrams.
Okay. Okay.
And
So
there's
they're kind of
yin and
like
yang lines
they're kind of like
also.
so is it like a dice? Like the
Yeah, so
hexagram
the
is like an image, or is it like something you throw too?
yeah, so what I do is I throw 3 coins. That's the easiest way to read the I Ching.
Okay.
Is you take 3 coins, because each line is either a yin or a yang line, meaning it's either a solid line or a broken line.
Okay.
So you use 3 coins that have head or tails on it. You toss it, and if it's head dominant, it's a solid line. If it's tail dominant, it's a broken line.
Okay.
If it's all heads or all tails, it's known as a changing line. And what that essentially means is that you mark it as a changing line. It
Hmm.
will change in the next hexagram. This is how you do the readings.
Okay.
Essentially, you build up the hexagram by throwing the coins 6 times. And so
Okay.
you draw broken, solid, and then you get your first hexagram. If there are any changing lines, if it's a solid or broken, it would change over to the opposite and make a whole new hexagram.
Okay.
And what that does is essentially like, this is your reading, the first one. The second one is like the potential that it has to move into.
Okay.
Kind
And
of
then
like if
there's a
you're playing
third one
cards.
after that, right?
No, that's just the reading, the 2 hexagrams or the
Okay.
one, because the changing lines each have advice to them. So when you look up I Ching, say I drew a hexagram, I look at the chart. Usually you would use a reference chart. I still do. I like don't memorize all the hexagrams or anything like that.
Uh-huh.
I look at a reference chart, and then I see, okay, this is hexagram 34. Then I have a changing line on line 3. Then when you look up online or in a book, hexagram 34, there will be a whole section that will say line 1, line 2, line 3, line 4, line 5, line 6. If I have a changing line 3, there's going to be a little section giving me advice on what that means.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Cool. Wow. Yeah,
So
this is
that's,
really deep. This is really deep. It's a little confusing, but it's
yeah,
really
I know. That's a lot of information, but that's essentially the whole concept.
okay. Okay, cool. Yeah, so
And you don't have to like do all of that. You can just download an app. I'm not going to lie, that's what I do. And I
okay.
just, you tap the button a few times, and it'll give you a hexagram.
Nice.
So I use that oftentimes too. It's
Okay.
really up to you.
Which app do you
But
like?
um, I have to look it up. It's just like one of the classic I Chings. I can't pull it up on my phone
Okay.
right now.
Okay.
But I'll send it to you if anyone
Okay, we
wants to
can
use.
share it.
There's
Yeah,
a
we
lot,
can
a
share
few
it.
different.
We can share it in the description. And if you have any like YouTube videos or anything that people can watch to learn, maybe we can
Okay.
share those too.
Yeah, I do actually have one video up on the 11 reasons of like how astrology supports psychology.
Oh, cool. Cool.
That's one.
Yeah,
So
that'll be awesome. And then we'll also share your link to your book. I'm like it seems so beautiful with you mentioned that before we got on the call that the book has a lot of your awakening journey in there as well, right?
yeah, lots of those moments, like epiphany moments or just little stories,
Hmm.
and woven in with insight, teachings, and then poems and prose. Yeah.
Amazing, amazing. And it's available on Amazon, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We'll drop those links in the description as well so that people can purchase. And I think we covered a lot today. That was
Yeah.
super, super potent and beautiful. And I learned a lot. I learned so much. So thank you so much, Cher. And you're always welcome back on the podcast at any time that you'd like. And thank you so much. This was a true honor to have you on.
Thank you. Yeah, it was so much fun, and I know we could keep talking on
We
forever.
could easily keep talking. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe we'll
Awesome.
do a part two in the future.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Until next time. Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you.